All right, we should be ready to go, Paige.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, my name is Paige Vanderlinden, and we're just going to go around the group real quick. If you all could say your name and then what grade level and or subject you teach, and then we'll kind of get started with our discussion. So, like I said, my name is Paige, and I am not actually a teacher. I'm a college and career advocate at a high school in Topeka.
My name is Alan and Holdren. I'm a teacher of English and entrepreneurship and also business communications at St. John's High School in Beloit, Kansas.
All right, I'm Lisa Wilson, and I teach 7th through 12th grade business and computers at Argonia Public Schools.
My name is Cooper Allen. I teach art 7 through 12 in Howard, Kansas.
All right, thank you all. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in with our first question, which is describe the concepts in the social cognition and attitudes article that stand out to you and explain why. So something that really stood out to me was the section on simplifying our social world, where it talked about how, we have this mental schema and we kind of make this mental blueprint of how we expect something to be, like if it walks like a dog, it barks like a dog, it must be a dog. We don't necessarily have to have seen every single type of dog there is to know that what we see is a dog. So that kind of got me thinking about, how our brain creates these shortcuts and these sort of mental maps and how we can better navigate these shortcuts in education to help our students. And so not something that I have personally used, but something that I happened to see online a couple of weeks ago was a teacher talking about how, she was teaching her students to learn how to read, but rather than using like sight words and flashcards and things like that, she was instead teaching them these 31 spelling rules of English that are true for 98% of the English language, and how instead of seeing these flashcards and only knowing what that one single word is, then if they know these 31 rules, they can apply that across the English language for 98% of it to be true. So my question then for the group is, have you found any shortcuts like this that help your students to learn?
Well, I can start off. So yeah, I mean, it's all learning experience, isn't it? So I mean, I think we're all new teachers, obviously, if we're in this class, and so thinking through those different devices that can help people to learn. I think of the common mnemonic device, using that in the classroom and just getting into repetition and without becoming banal or boring, but using devices like that to help kids to learn. You get out of that when you're not in teaching and you're not thinking about educating. And I guess having not been through that process of creating a curriculum before, just getting into that idea of repetition with the class has been something that's been important for me.
Yeah, and I kind of agree there with Alan. Like, I know in one of my classes, that's one of the things I teach an accounting class that, if you don't understand the accounting equation, you're not ever going to learn anything else in accounting. Like, so you have to have that repetition. You have to be able to understand it. And so we spend a lot of time just getting that concept down and then trying to build on that. And so I think it's the same thing, just that repetition of doing it over and over again so the kids can understand it and be able to recall it when they need it.
Mine's been a little different since mine's more create things than recall information. So it's been more trying to explain things in a way that they can relate. Because obviously some kids will understand some things differently. Like one kid might grew up on a ranch, so I use ranch terms and it clicks for them. Another kid grew up in town and likes to work on cars, so I have to use mechanic terms and it clicks for them. So trying to figure out where everybody lies is rough.
But that's cool
Cooper, I
that
think
you
it's
can see that too, Cooper, like that you can change it up for your students based on, where they, how they've kind of grown up in the terminology that they understand to make it click for them. So maybe adjusting that a little bit, but you're still teaching them the same types of things.
right. Like I was going to say, just getting it back to the reading, these kids all have a different kind of mental blueprint for how they understand things, and you're using that to explain this to them. So that's pretty cool. But that kind of takes us into our next question, which is about describing how you have seen these concepts at work in your own classroom or other concepts from the reading. So Alan, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so kind of building on the previous class that I took, just the very first class that I took preparing for this transition to teaching, we were talking a lot about developing a culture of learning. So that's my objective in sort of every circumstance. So that's kind of the filter that I guess put in this new information on social cognition through. And so we put a lot of emphasis on the first week. There were actually teachers, mentors that said that we shouldn't even touch on the coursework during the course of the first week, as we just get to know each other, students and teacher. And so I put a lot of effort into creating something for the first days of school so that I could build that culture, get to know the students, understand them. And so thinking through the reading, when it spoke about implicit and explicit attitudes, that first week I think was so important for developing a positive, at least it seemed so, the explicit attitude of the students was that. And implicitly, I think also they've been very open to getting to know what it is that I'm going to propose, because that first week we spent a lot of time just getting to know each other. So it wasn't a problem to learn their names and just get an idea of, like Cooper was saying, just getting to know their background so we could apply the different lessons to them personally. And then also for me, on the opposite side, there's a reverse culture shock. Like I moved back to the United States after like 15 years abroad, and out of the last 16 basically. And so just getting to know the vocabulary and like helping my own attitude to be, I guess, more in sync with theirs, just speaking the same language and understanding the same things. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it's funny. I have a word of the day in my class for English that I apply to all the freshmen through seniors, and they've developed a word of the day for me, so I'm not going to understand them. And then some of the other vocabulary and theories that stood out to me were priming and directional goals, just scaffolding, giving the students the basis on which to build other lessons. And priming was something that really stood out to me for that. And just having directional goals, like looking towards the future, understanding what their motivations are, understanding what my motivations are, and trying to sync them together so that we're trying to do the same things. We're developing the entrepreneurship class, a school store. And for the students, they want a blanket with like the crest of the school stamped on it, and that's their motivation, and that's enough for them. And so I'm just trying to latch onto that, trying to figure out what makes them tick and move there. And last one was chameleon effect. The chameleon effect for me is interesting because I see how much peer pressure there is when somebody reacts negatively to something and others jump on, and then somebody reacts positively to something and everybody else jumps on. So how can I use those positive elements to get everybody jumping on and in the same direction, working towards those goals that we have? Do you guys find that this is my question for you, do you understand the students' attitudes well, and how are you able to sort of use those attitudes to develop your class in the direction that you want to take it?
Yeah, it's actually interesting, that question, the attitudes of the students, because I don't know how you guys have seen on your students, but a lot of times I get a lot of a negative attitude from my students towards school. Like they don't want to be there. They don't want to participate. They don't want to have anything to do with what we're learning in the classes. And so it's really hard to try to be that positive influence and that positive person in the classroom and be like, okay, well, this could be something that you could use, in the future, or this is a lifelong skill that you're going to need. And so to try to get them to change and see beyond like the right now of the moment has been a little bit tricky in some ways. So
Yeah, Alan, when you were talking about, those first days of school, just kind of, focusing on getting to know one another. So the closest I am to like a traditional like classroom setting is I'm kind of supervising some students as they are taking online classes, but we have them taking a variety of classes from a variety of different places. So those first couple of days of school, me and the person who's co-teaching this class with me, we were just, trying to make sure, is everybody enrolled? Is everybody, able to log on? All of those sorts of things. So I didn't feel like during that time we really got the chance just to get to know them, because we were trying to figure out so many other things in a little bit of time that they were with us in the room. And so I just now feel like I'm starting to understand their attitudes and understand how they work best. And now we're like a month into school. So that's something I wish that we would have done and been able to do, is take a little bit more time to get to know each other.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out some of mine. Like, what was it, our second week? Our second week in, me and my girlfriend had to be quarantined, so I missed that whole like second or third week. They were first 2 weeks, new teacher, cold shoulder. Nobody really wants to talk. Everybody just keeps to themselves. And then after I come back, I can hardly keep them quiet. So it's hard to try to figure everybody out. And since I'm an elective, you have the people that want to be there, and then the ones that don't want to be there, but they couldn't take any other classes, so they just got thrown in my class. So it's trying to get them to where they at least like being in the classes is an onward struggle.
well, and do you guys ever get the attitudes from your students where they just don't want to like say anything at all? It's like you present a question and you're like, okay, this is a group discussion, and they all just stare at you like, why are you talking to us, and why do you expect us to answer you?
Mm-hmm. I always feel like we don't have any idea of what's going on in their home lives.
Yeah, I agree a lot right there, Alan. I think you've hit that one pretty good. There's so much going on outside of school that we don't see, and it makes it difficult while they're in school to focus on those things.
So that's kind of a good segue into the next question, which is describe the teaching strategies you've adopted or tried out in light of these experiences, and describe their efficacy. So Lisa, do you want to kind of start that one off?
Sure. And so for me, one of the words that I kind of came up with the stereotype, because I grew up in a 1A school and I'm teaching in a 1A school. And so, from my experience of being a student in a 1A school, I don't remember having, yeah, you'd have your days when you went to school and you're like, I don't want to be here. But like overall, I don't remember having a negative memory of being in school, or like, oh, I hate being here and I don't want to be here. And so when I went in, I kind of had this stereotype of like, oh, these kids are gonna, come in my class and they're gonna like to be here, and it's just gonna be a fun experience, and they're gonna have good attitudes. And that's really not what happened at all. And so it kind of threw me off guard, but I think I kind of went in with that stereotype already. And so I kind of had to change my perspective on things a little bit. So like one of the things I'm trying to do is adopt more of a positive attitude in my classroom to try to mimic that, so that maybe the students will kind of see that, school is not a bad thing. Like there are positive things here. For instance, I have one 7th grade girl who is very negative towards herself. And she just thinks that nobody likes her, that the teachers all hate her, that she's not good at anything. And it's really not the case. And so I try to spend a little bit more time with her when she's in my class. I only have her 2 days a week because we alternate, 7th grade alternates computer class with band class. And so I just try to spend more time with her and trying to let her know that not everybody hates her, not every thing at school is negative, not every teacher is negative towards you. And I think that that kind of that mood congruent memories that our students get, like they latch onto those. And I don't think that we realize that as teachers, that that negative reinforcement that we give them really does stick with them a whole lot more than what our positive comments do. And like Alan said a few minutes ago, even at home, like we don't know what's going on in their home lives as much. And so if they're getting negative at home and then getting negative at school, like it's really hard to have any kind of positive from those kids because all they hear is negative. And so I just feel like trying to be positive, trying to teach that positivity, trying to show her, you're not the worst student in the class. You're, telling her like, you're not the worst student, spending extra time with her, like showing her teachers don't all hate you. Just because one teacher might have had a bad experience, with you, then that's not everybody. So my question to you guys is, have you found any strategies that have worked well with any of your students?
So something I tried out this last week was, so students have been kind of working on their classes individually, just on their own time. And so something I tried out this last week was actually having them group together with the students who are in their same class or in kind of a similar subject area, if they're taking like an early childhood class or something in the medical field or something like that. So I kind of had them group together, talk about how things are going in their class, what they're not understanding, what they are understanding, and just kind of work together on that. Since I'm not, the actual teacher of these classes, I thought, maybe if they get together, they can kind of help each other out more than what they can just figure out individually. So I had them do that last week, and I felt like that worked pretty well. Some of them have actually been staying working together in groups and seem to be doing better doing that. So that's something that I've done.
We only have a 4-day school week, but it still seems like they come with a bad attitude every day. So since it's in our class, I try to give them a little more freedom. Like, you pick what you do. I'll give you like certain things to try to make their projects more theirs and not just, here's what I want you to do. Here's how you do it. Everybody's looks the same. And then on Fridays, we have started doing a prize before class. I'll play like some old songs, old country, old rock songs. You name the band, you get like a little push pop or piece of candy or something. And some of them don't care. Then some of them, it's like the highlight of the day. They get into it. Everybody starts leaning in. Everybody, be quiet. I can't hear. And it seems like it brings up the mood on Fridays a little more. So it's a little better. And then you got to throw out some candy to the ones that just don't know music. So
I'm glad I'm not the only one with trouble on Fridays. The motivating on Fridays is difficult. I find that, I was talking about the mimicry, that chameleon effect in the class. And so when you have somebody who's got a little bit of a negative attitude from what I've seen, it just kind of catches on. I guess that's like that anywhere outside of school, in school. And if they have some sort of consensus, then that can take over. So my strategy there is to divide them up and put them with somebody that they may not choose to spend a lot of time with, but get them in a different sort of a realm so that they have to deal with that other personality and that they don't have as strong of an effect on. So I feel like that has been successful. I just have really small classes. I mean, it's a tiny school, so 10 to 15 students per class. So there's a limit to the number of people that you can kind of pair these guys up with. But it seems to be preferable to just allowing them free movement in the entire class. I don't know how long that'll last.
I was going to say, Alan, you've got big classes. I think my biggest class is 10 students. So, that is a little more tricky in some of my classes when I have like one class, I actually just have one. So, but most of my classes are about 4, so it's a little more tricky to try to divide them up, but that's a good strategy. I might try that with some of them though.
Mhm.
All right, well, we'll kind of go on to our final question then, which is discuss what puzzles you and what you want to learn next about principles of social cognition and attitudes in your classroom. So Cooper, do you want to take that one?
I didn't really, maybe I didn't really just understand much. Not, I was slightly puzzled on most of it, but more how I can have it be more, not more prevalent in my classroom, but more so I can see more of like everybody else, so I can understand everybody and pick up on the cues from the other students on if something's going on. Because if they're slacking off in class, I just want to be like, you just need to get back to work. And last week I had a girl didn't want to work, and she just slacked off and was like, whatever you got going on, like I understand some things might be hard, but you kind of have to work on this. She goes, well, my aunt just died. I was like, wish I would have maybe known that at the beginning of class, and I might have. So maybe learning how to pick up on some more of the social cues a little better and put it in my class a little more, maybe, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah.
It seems like we almost need some sort of teachers meeting or something like that when you've got some major event that takes place that could influence students' behavior. Because I mean, that every other teacher during that day probably had the same experience as you, Cooper.
Yeah.
And just like, when somebody comes into my class, I came across a similar thing the other day. And I mean, you kind of stick your foot in it, but I mean, at least at that point, I don't know.
We had there's an incident happening at another high school in our district right now, and there are, students are protesting and things like that. But they sent us out, like the whole district, this super vague email on Friday about what was happening. And it's like, okay, well, that almost like makes me more worried, because then, I don't know if this is something that is impacting students in my school. It just left me with more questions than it did answers, and how this is affecting the students that I work with.
Well, and I think our students now they have so much more social stuff maybe going on because of social media, like things behind the scenes that we don't even see, and that as students, when we were students, we probably didn't deal with. Social media was definitely not a thing when I was in school. So our kids are dealing with all of the things, the whole, well, we've got to be on, and super popular here, we've got to do this, or and so we're dealing with that side of stuff with our students, plus all the stuff at home, plus all the stuff at school. And I just think they have a lot that makes it more difficult in some ways than maybe it used to be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And then when they speak in the literature about impact bias and durability bias, like how an event or a moment may create this feeling, and then how long it lasts, and we often overestimate how long it may last, or how much of an effect it actually has. I think that's a huge thing between us and previous generations, whenever we were born, and this generation. It's just hard to know. Because our expectations do not match theirs, and so that the attitude can be one of diffidence, like when we try and face them about something, just saying, like Cooper was talking about, why aren't you working on this, like but I find myself not really knowing what to expect. So that's something that puzzles me, is just how we can get to know these kids well enough to be able to know what they're, at least to be able to communicate with them well on a daily basis. Because I don't think we'll ever, I'm never going to follow one of my students on Snapchat, but I know that they're all on Snapchat.
Right.
And that's where the fun things in their lives take place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think that kind of concludes our, we have any other final thoughts or anything before we wrap up?
Just want to say thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation.